Sorry, that was very loud.
Everyone knows.
Closed caption for the hearing. No.
When we're done, we use this as padding for the power line project you got going on out there.
Oh, yeah.
See how much of the stuff they're putting out?
It's so cool.
It's unreal.
Walk down.
I've been watching it. It's right at the edge of my property. They're
Yeah.
replacing these three
Yeah.
poles.
Yeah.
And I just sat back and said, how are you guys gonna do this?
Right, exactly. They have it all.
You're out in the swamp for the side of this embankment going under the river. They got these three machines up in the air. I mean, the amount of material they brought in just to
Do this
just to
project.
do this project
Yeah,
alone.
and it's a long project.
Yeah.
Before that.
So they were at it all day. I got one post done, so
We'll make it up.
this is a tough one. That's like a 90-degree corner.
Not quite. Another minute to go.
Oh, thank you.
And not much different from what was there before in terms of height or
Maybe sturdier.
just went from wood to metal, basically, from my perspective.
Okay, well, maybe that. I'm an engineering thing. Doesn't benefit.
Mr. Chairman, it's now 7 p.m.
Okay, it being time appointed 7 p.m. I'll call the order of the meeting of the Swansea Zoning Board of Adjustment for April 18, 2022. We have minutes, and the four of us here were all present last month, and the minutes when the meeting was held on the 21st of March. Minutes have been sent to us previously. Entertain a motion on those minutes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do you have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the.
Mr. Chairman, we
Yes,
usually have the roll call and the reading.
Oh, I'm
of the
sorry.
agenda.
well, regional impact before that. You're right, I'm sorry. We'll take a breather here, and I'll ask Beverly to,
I mean, you're doing this too long.
that's true, to read our agenda for the evening, and then we'll take a vote on regional impact before we deal with the minutes.
We'll take the roll call. So,
Sure.
Keith Tebow,
Here.
Adam Mahern,
Here.
and Karazinski,
Here.
Brian Rutgers,
Here.
Bill Heltwalker is not here. Wayne Lechleiter, not here. Julian Excel, Eric Callio. Any of those people on the Zoom call? No.
Jillian indicated she'd be here possibly a little bit, she'd be here, but likely
Bit late.
a little bit late.
Okay.
So we're gonna hunt.
The Swansea Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting agenda for April 18th, 2022 is as follows. After the call to order and the review and consideration of the minutes, the public hearings will follow. The first one to be considered is ZBA number 22-003, variance application. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton request a variance from section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a single-family dwelling without the required 225-foot frontage on a town state maintained road on Talbot Hill Road. The property is shown at tax map 44, lot 10, and is located in the rural agricultural district. The next item for public hearing is ZBA number 22-004, a special exception application. Says Miss Lancioni, and that is, I get the right name. Susan, thank you. Susan Ingram Lancioni and Scott Lancioni. There you go. Request to grant a special exception, section 3-AA, article B of the zoning ordinance to construct a detached accessory dwelling unit in an existing outbuilding at 2 Forest Avenue. The subject property is shown at tax map 73, lot 30. It is located in the business district. And the last application for public hearing is ZBA number 22-006. It's a variance application. Danielle Latini of Fieldstone Land Consultants PLLC on behalf of East Coast Evangelical Conference, DBA Pilgrim Pines, request a variance in section 4, article A.3, article, no, that's section A.3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a pavilion within the 30-foot front setback at 220 West Shore Road. Subject property is shown at tax map 46, lot 3, located in the rural agricultural district. And there may be other business as required.
Thank you.
Okay.
Looking at the applications that we have in front of us at this time. You're good. Looking at the 3 public hearings that we have tonight. Does anyone feel these could have a regional impact, and if not, we'd entertain a motion for that? So we actually just go through the public hearings and tell us what we're looking to do here may have any kind of a regional impact beyond our own town borders.
I'd like to make a motion that none of these have a regional impact.
Okay,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to determine that none of the 3 cases we have before us rises to the level of a regional impact. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We'll pick this up again at the minutes. I think we might have actually had a motion and a second on the minutes. Questions on the minutes? Any questions of Sarah? Or anything else relative to the minutes we had from our March 21st meeting?
You not already covered the minutes?
We didn't vote, I
Oh,
don't
you
think.
didn't, okay.
So
But you had a motion on the floor.
we had a motion, we had a second.
Mhm.
Now we'll see if anyone has any questions on the motions. Hearing,
That was me.
hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Now we get that. one. That's
I
fine.
have you.
Were you here? You're not here? That's okay. Four is good. Get it passed. So our first public hearing tonight is a variance application, ZBA number 22003. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton request a variance from section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a single-family dwelling within the required 225-foot front, without the required 225-foot frontage of a town/state maintained road on Talbot Hill Road. Property shown at tax map 44, lot 10, located in the rural agricultural district. I'll ask Sarah to help tee this up for us. Tell us what we've got. What's going on?
Let's see, the submitted plans indicate the driveway would be approximately 300 feet up Talbot Hill Road from East Shore Road. The applicant proposes to maintain the estimated 300 feet of public right of way on Talbot Hill Road to ultimately construct a single family dwelling.
So before we open it, I'll
Yeah.
get a question.
Yeah.
Procedural. It says here that it's a class 6 road. We don't maintain our class 6 roads in the wintertime, do we?
No.
So it's not really technically a maintained road, is it?
No, it is not.
So then does it need to come in front of us? Because the ordinance says it has to be a town maintained road to be here.
That's why we're here, to get a variance from being on a town maintained road.
As opposed
Right,
to
but what I'm saying is that they're not on a town road.
it's a chicken and an egg potential situation.
Yeah, you see what he's,
I have no idea.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, and maybe it's, maybe I'm just.
The board has heard variances for this request in the past.
Okay,
We've been consistent in most cases, I think, but yeah, we have heard them. But I think if you read this, it made it sound like they don't have 120, 200, 225 foot frontage. They have 150. you can read this to, and it's what, that they don't have enough frontage as opposed to.
They do not have any frontage on a town maintained road.
Okay, okay. Is that clear? And I believe we've heard these before with, and the same just point you brought up before has been brought up
Yeah,
in the past.
yeah, and still clear as mud on
Yeah, I guess we.
it. I mean, I guess my position, my question really is, if it's a town maintained road, as the ordinance says it has to be, then, and you don't have the frontage, then come to us for a variance, right?
Mhm.
But if it's not a town maintained road, then it's already, it doesn't matter because it's not covered by our ordinance.
Well, I think that's where some people would maintain that that's our job, is to give relief from an ordinance for the town.
May I add to that?
Sure.
The driveway regulations stipulate that you can grant a variance to this.
We on 206 road, the class 6 road.
Permission can only be
Can I ask a
granted.
question? Is Talbot Hill entirely class 6? Or is it portion?
No,
The
this,
first portion of it's town maintained.
right, on the
And then the
Route
latter portion is-
32 end, and then as it
It
goes down.
becomes class 6 road then. So
Yeah.
it's half and half.
Yeah,
I think what Brian's saying.
yeah, and
is
that's
that-
exactly where you're going, is where I'm
Yeah.
going, is if it's not a town maintained road, then they can do what they want, they don't need to come to us, they need to go to the town planning board, but.
It's not within the scope of our practice to make a judgment on that. And if we've been asked to do in the past, we're just saying,
The driveway regulations pointed back to
But-
this board.
but why do they point back to us when it has no bearing on, when
it's
nothing
not
in the
within our
zoning,
ordinance.
nothing in the zoning ordinance reflects it?
But you can also allow a use that's not allowed in a zone.
Okay,
I'm
we can
not
move
saying
forward, I'm
that-
not
I'm
trying to be
not saying that we-
argumentative. I'm
No,
just-
no, yeah, no,
I'm
it's
not
just
saying that we don't, I'm not saying how we would go one way or the other, just saying that it's not part of the zoning ordinance.
That allows us to make a determination.
Right, it's not part of the ordinance,
So
so,
we can only make a variance or an exception to an existing town ordinance, but
but this, I realize that it's in the drive, I had to look, I looked today to find it.
Mhm.
I know what's in there, I'm just saying that it's not part of the zoning ordinance, at least from
the way I read it.
the way I read it. So we can make a decision, but
Mhm.
I believe
It's
the
not
zoning
part
board
of it.
actually gave the variance to use class 6 road on the other side of the.
If you,
I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
I said the zoning board actually gave a variance to use class 6 on the other side of Talbot Hill.
which is fine.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what he's
It's just-
referring to, is I brought the same issue up then too, it's like, I mean, we're asking to give a variance to an ordinance that doesn't exist.
well, it
Right.
says section 4, article A3, what is that referring to?
All lots have to be 3 acres in size
Okay, does it say?
on a town or state maintained
It's-
road,
it
and this
actually
is not.
states- It actually states that.
It says
Yeah.
on
And
a
that's-
town or state
And
maintained
that's
road.
all it says.
That's all it says.
So I'm just saying that if we make a decision, we're going outside.
Well, are we?
it.
That's why I have the language to correct.
I would agree with you, Brian, in terms of how you're presenting or seeing the ordinance and how it's being presented to us. This doesn't fit the scope of that
Yeah,
requirement.
that's why I'm asking,
Which-
yeah.
And that doesn't mean we can't maybe.
No, we can
make a
certainly hear it,
decision.
make a decision on it,
Hear
but I
it, make a
just-
decision, I'm just saying it's not.
Is it moot?
I think so, and it was the last time we did this too, I mean, if it doesn't work, I mean, our powers are limited as a board to either a variance or an exception to an existing ordinance that we don't write.
And
Well, this ordinance doesn't even exist because it's not a town maintained road. It's like trying to give somebody a variance to have a fish tank in their house, it's
and
like, okay.
the way the driveways is listed, it suggests that we do, and we don't.
Yeah, but we don't issue driveway permits, that's a
Right.
planning board issue.
Right, and the driveway permit, when you read through what they're saying that we can do it, and we're saying we can't.
Right. Yeah, they haven't granted us that power. I mean,
We don't have that
do you See any different? It's up to you and Keith, I was just asking.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah. Well, if you look at this, I mean, that, yes, it's trying to be literal, there is an ordinance that does deal with 205 foot frontage on a town or state maintained road. With a rear, they also have a front setback and a rear setback from the same, A3. So I guess what they're asking us to do, what this board is being asked to do is to give a variance on allowing frontage, no, this lot does not have 225 feet of frontage on a town or state maintained road. It's a private road, and they're asking us to give them a variance on that. I kind of see it fitting our purview, and I think Mike's right that this has come before us before.
Yes, yeah,
You know?
yeah, I certainly
And
remember.
and part of the dilemma is if it's been labeled class 6, the town cannot maintain, the town cannot improve it without voters' approval.
Mhm.
Right,
So legally, they can't touch it. There's rare exceptions,
right.
but effectively, that's it. So I mean, you couldn't write an ordinance any other way. Because they can't touch it.
But
So there are
They can't touch it, how do we grant it?
I mean, this is like you said, the chicken and the egg.
So we first went, the applicants first went to the select board meeting, approved through the select board, knowing that they'd have to go through both, not knowing which one they wanted to go.
Yeah.
The select board did something here.
Okay. And we'd certainly be remiss to not hear it, and send it back to them, because then
just an endless loop. Okay.
all right, well, I guess we'll hear the case if you mind, and then
Yep.
we'll make our recommendations at the end.
Yeah. Did we get any feedback from road agent, fire chief, police chief? No, okay. But they were made aware of this.
Yeah, DPW is aware of it, and I believe he has had some conversations with the prospective property owners, but he didn't submit any feedback for you guys.
That's part of the issue is because the road's not maintained, and we usually hear from emergency responders in some fashion on this kind of in the past. This kind of
Certainly, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I just,
It seems like it's a lot. We'll hear it.
Just one point of clarification,
Absolutely.
just so I understand what we're specifically voting on or hearing.
Yeah.
Is it based upon the fact that this property doesn't have any town or state maintained road square footage or frontage, or a specific number? Are we
They
trying?
have none.
I understand they have none, but what are we voting on? To allow them to put and build on a property without any, or a specific number of feet, knowing that other properties may have to maintain a certain amount of, frontage to be able to be granted, occupancy and within the guides of the ordinance. So which are we voting on? Are we looking at just allowing them to have?
it's a good point.
It seems to me since we're.
So they have to they have to, we have to vote twice. One, can they do this? And then two, give them a variance on the square footage or the frontage.
Right. I don't
Are there
know,
two-
we don't know. That the ordinance doesn't give us authority to cover.
Yeah. There's really two situations that we're looking at.
What it says in our ordinance on 8, A3A, 4A, 3, is that all lots shall be of at least 3 acres in size
Mhm.
with 225 foot frontage on a state or town maintained road,
Which they have 0 of.
which they have 0. So I think we're asking,
That's
we're being asked
one-
to give a variance.
One variance would be just to be able to build on that lot with no,
With no frontage on the town.
and then the second aspect of this is how many feet they are proposing to
How
have.
much frontage
They have on some sort
on
of
a piece
road.
of property. I mentioned this property's been subdivided.
Okay.
So maybe we'll hear that.
Okay. I think I get what we're,
No, I'm confused.
If we're going back to voting on the frontage,
Just the second.
I mean, that's
that's the only.
all A3 covers, and we're gonna blame it on Brookstone.
So,
Different stone.
Okay.
all right. Any other questions before we,
Did you open the public hearing?
I did not open a public hearing yet.
You did not.
No, we were just discussing whether we could do that along the way. And unless I hear anything from the board itself, I'll I will open a public hearing and we'll hear what's being proposed and we'll do our job. All right, we'll open a public hearing on ZBA number 22-003, this variance application, requesting a variance from section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a single-family dwelling without the required 225-foot frontage on a town, state maintained road on Talbot Hill. Tax map 44, lot 10, located in the rural agricultural district. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton or their representative, kind of let us know what you're looking to do. Why don't you, I guess, come around here? If you need to grab a chair, if you want to, or you don't have to stand, that's for sure.
Chairman, who are you speaking to this hearing?
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, thank you very much. I see this is from myself, Adam, Brian, and Ann.
Sorry, I don't mean, but you need.
And we'll see Jillian for Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So
So I think what you would let you do any kind of a presentation you might have. I'm sure we'll have some questions and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Right, I'm Ann Hamilton, my husband Chris Hamilton.
Mhm.
So what we're looking to do is, we currently have a purchase and sales agreement in place for the 61 acres on Talbot Hill Road, tax map 4410-0, and providing that you as the town of Swansea give us an approval for the single residential building permit. The property, as we discussed, is unique in shape where the only access comes from the class 6 portion of Talbot Hill Road. And we are requesting the variance for the section 4, article A, paragraph 3 of the zoning ordinance to make it the approved building lot.
Okay.
The road frontage of that lot does have 1,000 feet. We have already talked to Joe DeRusso in the Public Works Department, and he made it very clear to us that we would be responsible for all the road maintenance. So we understand that the town of Swansea
I need to
is not.
stop you. They interrupt your mojo.
Okay.
On Talbot Hill Road. On that section of Talbot Hill Road that is class 6.
Yeah.
So we did, like we were saying, we discussed with Joe DeRusso, we understand that we are solely responsible. The town holds no liability to that. We understand that that's how other people that have previously built on class 6 roads, they're responsible. We understand that. We estimate that we would be responsible in using approximately 300 feet of the class 6 portion of Talbot Hill Road, obviously coming off East Shore Road. We've also reached out and emailed Fire Chief Gould about what we are thinking about doing. He advised us that for the driveway, it would need to be 20 feet in width. And if the driveway itself is over 150 feet long, that we would have to have a hammerhead type of a turnaround. And that was his recommendations and coming from safety codes.
So is this
is East Shore.
okay, that's the backside lot. Is
Did the, while they're looking at the map, here, did the fire chief give you anything in writing relative to his?
We have a copy of the email correspondence with him.
yeah.
So I need to ask you a question. It says here, or maybe I'm misreading, he's talking about a right of way. And what's that?
Oh, right away.
Point out where that is, Brian?
Yeah, right on the page that we got, the cover page here, it's an ordinance to construct a single family dwelling on a class 6 road. Construction of the home would require permanent access from the Talbot Hill Road right of way. Is that what they're talking about? The class 6 road is the right of way? Okay, thank you.
If you can follow that. But there is a fair amount of frontage anyway.
Thank you. My whole street's not.
So
Interesting this part.
I've looked at that, yes. So when the fire chief referenced, I think, a driveway in this, what he's really talking about is Talbot Hill Road.
I think both.
But, and a driveway off of Talbot Hill, so improving it. And on the map you gave us, how far, I think it's a 300
feet.
100 feet from where it intersects with.
That's an estimate.
Okay.
You're not gonna pave this road.
No.
No, heavy fire trucks are. I mean, did he tell you?
We didn't have that discussion, but
We gotta respond first.
I know, but, yeah, and stay.
When you ask questions, make sure Beverly can hear you.
Oh, sorry, Beverly, I was asking if the chief told them how heavy the trucks are. So if fire apparatus did respond, that would be, loaded with water. A lot.
there was no
Is there
actual,
communication from the chief?
right, there was no over the phone communications. What you see
You
is
just
the
sent an email.
communications, right?
I know I hate to ask you this, but technically you should have gone to the planner with that communication. Is it possible you can forward a copy of the email to our planner so we have it for the records? 'Cause he should have directed the communication the right way.
I think, didn't he include, there's,
Sarah?
I think it didn't go to some people in Swansea, right? Didn't go to Gerber.
They went to Mike.
Mike Jasmine? Oh, you've got a copy of it?
Didn't go to Gerber.
Okay.
They asked the chief a direct question, gave me a direct answer.
Right.
I talked to both Chief Poole and DPW Director, so.
Okay.
Actually, add it as an addendum to the minutes, Mike, if you send me a copy of it, I can add it as an addendum to the minutes.
Sure.
Just I got a quick question.
Go ahead, Adam.
Applicants. I'm using this image right here. This one with the
Yep.
little.
Rooms, I got that one up too.
Seems like the best one for me to work with.
Mhm.
Here's your proposed driveway.
Yes,
This is Talbot Hill Road, right?
correct.
And how much, I think you said it already, but I'm just want to clarify, how much frontage do you have estimated between here and here on that road?
1,000 feet.
About 1,000 feet, okay? And from this point to where you believe the connection is to, was it East Shore Road or?
Right.
You said about 300?
East Shore Road, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, this direction here. So you say about 300 feet to that?
Correct.
Okay,
That seems to true up too with the.
Well, that's like
Okay.
about 250, because if you look at this here, here's 250.
Orange, 250, up a little bit further. 300.
right on that edge.
It's this one, so
Okay,
you're up to 270 here.
okay. That one.
Other questions?
So to follow up just quickly,
Absolutely, no, that's,
had this been a town maintained road, this property is in full conformance.
We wouldn't be here.
right.
Okay.
And we have no jurisdiction over a non-town maintained road.
That's my questions. I think I'm clear.
This is a public hearing. I don't know if there's anyone here that would like to speak to this particular request for or against or middle of the road. Is there anyone here that is interested in speaking to this application? Not at the moment. If you are and you're hedging, you have time until we close the public hearing. So anyone who decides to give us any thoughts, we'll certainly give you the floor. There's a number of questions that you had to answer along the way. And one of them, and I may reference others, but one of them is that under our necessary hardship is that there are special conditions of this property that distinguishes it from other properties in the area. And I know you gave us an answer to that, but I would like to ask you to help us. What I'm sort of struggling with is there's a lot of properties that are on Class 6 roads. And the town's ordinance says you can't build on them, clearly. And the only way to get relief really of any town ordinance is here at a zoning board. Some people may, like Brian may say, we really don't even have that jurisdiction here. He can take that, certainly take that tack. We try to be that, as a zoning board by its very nature is a relief valve. There's no other way except possibly court, I guess, for you to take any action. So I sort of really do side with Brian on this, but there really isn't any other relief. And I do recall that we've taken this issue up, although it's one that obviously it's unclear as to whether we actually have the jurisdiction to give you what you're asking for because of the ordinance that says you can't build on these at all. Usually what happens is with a particular ordinance, it'll say you can't do this or that unless you get, it's specifically stated that unless you get a variance from the zoning board. This one is less clear. Although this issue's come up, and it's come up a lot because we have a lot of class 6 roads, but long tee up to a question is, what makes this property in your mind distinguishable from other properties that sit that sit on class 6 roads throughout Swansea? What's the difference? We have to do, one of the things we have to do is to get a variance, because what a variance is in its very nature is that the town has a law, it's in the ordinance, law, and we have to determine whether or not your particular case allows us the ability to, or rises to the occasion where we can say, Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, the law doesn't apply to you. And we have sort of that ability here. It's kind of like a judge. A judge can look at a law and do some interpretation of it when they're looking at a particular case. So in your case, one of the things we have to look at, we have to make a determination that your property is different than all the other properties that are on class 6 roads that would like also potentially to build on, but can't. So again, long tee up to a question is, you gave a few things here, but in your application, but tell us why this is different if you can do so.
The unique shape.
Okay.
No, by unique shape, meaning that you're essentially locked in.
Right.
There is no other
There is
access.
no other
Other
access
than,
only.
other than that.
Right, that is the only access in order to make it buildable.
In that sense, it's unique compared to some
Right.
class 6 roads.
Mhm.
It would probably be unique compared to if you look at other class 6 roads that have already been granted those variances, like Sycamore, for example. Probably somebody had to start the ball rolling, so this should be the unique one because with only having that access, that's the only way to get to it. There's nobody below that's done this to give that access. So that would make it, I guess, if you want to compare another class 6 road to this, but.
And
The shape alone.
this is another chicken and an egg issue when it comes to development within a community, is that what we have said in our larger ordinance is that until that gets built up to a class 5 road or better, we can't even take an application. So what do you do first? Do you get a variance and then improve the road, or does a builder come in, a developer come in and put a road in that meets the requirements of a class 5 road so that it can emergency access can get there and others? So yeah.
It's kind of like trying to get a job, but you need the experience, but you can't get the experience without getting the job. So we've needed for a long time to deal with the class 6 issue in Swansea from the
Right.
voters, but
It's not, we've not gotten it.
we just haven't got there yet. And all the ordinances, just keep in mind, are all approved by the taxpayers. We
It's
don't
not
have
us.
to write them.
It's a good point.
So we have to address the issue somehow, but we've got a lot of class 6 roads in Swansea.
And there are no abutters that came or.
Yeah, they're 400 miles away. Did you see the map?
Yeah, are there, so by putting in, if this is granted, are there other properties that you're allowing access to because of doing this?
Yes,
So,
this one potentially.
so whoever owns this property is benefiting from what you're proposing to do.
Which property?
This one here.
7.
So.
Is there a house on lot 9?
Which one is mine?
This one before.
And 9 is where the frontage meets the
A little triangle.
East Shore Road.
And if so, can we describe where it's sited?
Yes.
9,
There is a house on.
there's a house
Oh,
on
there is a
9.
Do you know
house.
roughly where
But
it's
their
located
frontage is
here?
On the south
Town
side.
Hill, and then it's supposed to be Shoreline.
Down in the wider part,
Yeah, it's like it's right here.
so it's right close, or is that an outbuilding?
I don't know. I don't even guess. Looks like there's structures here as well.
Okay, we'll take that one first. Gentleman in the back, and if you could state your name, please, for us.
Sure, Tony Triano.
Thank you. And you had your hand up.
No, I had my hand up because you asked if there were any butters. Right?
Oh, okay, and you're in a butter. Okay, thank you. I thought you also wanted to speak.
No, Mike had something.
Yes, Mike.
So, obviously, if you guys deny the variance, then it's done. If you do approve the variance, they still gotta go back to the select board. That was the directive from the select board. The select board said they have no option but to say no for the reasons that Brian said.
Hmm.
But if you were to say yes, they could go back. Not saying they're gonna say yes. But they're saying they needed to have the variance before the select board could even hear it. So even if you say yes, it's not over.
Right, thank you.
Okay?
I didn't.
It would have been nice to have the select board minutes.
Said something like this.
What is the
What- yeah, go ahead.
benefit for 7?
So,
Possibly bringing power closer to it.
yeah, so if they did this, then 7 would have an opportunity to come here and ask us.
Would you like to hear from
Yes.
the owner of lot 7?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Christopher, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi there. Yep.
Hello, welcome.
Yes, it's nice to be on.
We can hear you loud and clear. You are the owner of what we call number 7,
Lot 7, that's right.
kind of across the way, if you will, part of it anyway.
That's exactly right. It abuts, that Lot 7 also abuts East Shore Road, as you can see from the tax map.
Lots of
Lots of frontage on East Shore Road.
frontage there. And how would you like? Right.
I'm sorry, say it again?
I'm just, is that the major point you were trying to make, that lot 7 has a lot of frontage on East Shore Road, or did you have another
No,
comment?
I don't have a concern. The only question I have is if there's a hammer turnaround, would that then intrude into our lot?
Hmm.
Yeah, we can't do anything with the driveway here. That doesn't even come in front of this board.
The hammerhead turnaround would be at our house.
I think, yeah.
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 Correct.
At your driveway
Yeah.
entrance to the lot
Oh,
10.
I see, okay.
So Chris, just so you're hearing what we're hearing is the proposal in front of us, at least as is presented, shows a driveway coming off of Talbot Hill Road.
Right.
That would not change the dimensions of that pass in any way, shape, or form. The hammerhead turnaround would be on lot 10's property.
Right.
What's being presented to us.
Yep. I see no objection from our perspective to this.
Appreciate that very much. And if you have any other, it's not the only time you'll get a chance to speak. If you want to speak again, let us know. We'll certainly get you up here. It's very, very helpful. We like to get proposals in the neighborhood. Thank you. Oh. What's that? Well, in the back, there isn't a butter, but he doesn't have anything at this point to add. I think he just identified himself as an abutter. Any other questions from the board? Clarifications, concerns? Queries?
My only concern is that they've expressed full awareness that they'd be responsible for this road.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if they're fully aware of what the burden that would be
Which,
if,
that's right, yeah, that was the question you sort of began
I
with.
kind of go around with is to make sure that you guys know that's big responsibility if there's a lot of snow, water, and I don't know what the drainage is like, and I'm sure other people, whoever a driveway permit would tell you what you need to do. But that's
But only up to your driveway.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, you're not responsible beyond that.
right, but
Mr. DeRusso made it very clear.
yeah,
He gave examples of
bad,
good and bad.
okay.
Back when we used to have winters.
Tell the story of the folks on Oliver Hill, who after last year's rains in July, predicted, it was estimated they're gonna need $23,000 to put their section of Class 6 road back together.
Just throwing that out
And I
there.
don't know about Wheeler Lane and Sycamore or any of the others where there's Class 6 housing,
Because you're
but
not-
they all pay it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, we had over 19 inches of rain last July. We usually get 4.5 in this region, so it was quite
And
a
we got it in 2 days.
prodigious month for rainfall. Yeah. One more time, any members of the public want to ask any questions before I close a public hearing on this, including our friend on Zoom? This is sort of the last chance. Any other questions that the board has at this point?
Just one quick one.
Please, Adam.
On any of the other lots going further up this Class 6 road, being unaware, I've never traveled this, so I don't have physical awareness or
Yeah.
other than these maps here. You know, are there any other buildings or properties that have any type sort of development beyond your property that you're aware of?
No.
Okay.
If you crest Talbot Hill on the, what would be in this case, the backside,
Mhm.
it comes up and over and then connects up to 32. There's a lot of development
On the other side.
until
Yeah.
it reaches pretty much the crest. And then as it starts to descend down towards Swansea Lake,
Mhm.
it's all Class 6. So it's sort of halfway, it's developed with a lot of homes on it. And then nothing as it comes down the hill
Mhm.
to this property.
It's a cool walk when it's not hunting season.
Yeah, it's a very pretty spot. I mean, we spend a lot of time on the other side of the lake and so forth. So,
Okay.
excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions of board? Before we close the public hearing? Anything else you'd like to add? We can always reopen a public hearing, but we tend to not do that. So just anything else you'd like to add at this point? Okay. Okay. If we have questions or if something comes up in our deliberations, one of the things we do is we will decide ourselves as a board whether we will reopen the public hearing, but otherwise we can't take any more testimony or information from you or anyone else for that matter while we deliberate. But we always have that option to reopen it, particularly if we have a question. That's how it works. All right. Any comments or concerns, questions? Items of note before we go to questions? Anything, Brian, to add at this point in time? Thank you, sir. Julie? Adam?
Just, you know, in terms of thinking, in terms of what Swansea's challenges are with respect to buildable lots and the lack thereof, you know, and seeing the opportunity of, you know, some of these roads becoming Class 5.
Yeah.
Where does it start? You know, that chicken and egg
It
thought.
is.
You know, you want people to be able to develop, but if they can't, what's the incentive, you know, to move forward?
That's one of the, some of the risks of speculative real estate development. Is,
Sure.
You try to, and if you take this as sort of with all of the traffic, you just look at this road as it exists now without looking at who's a butter, who's in front of us. That's part of it is that a developer takes that speculative risk of improving a road, laying out lots. And when I say improving a road, bringing it up to Class 5 standards so that those lots are legal and can be sold. But that's, sort of that's when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, when it comes to development, speculative development. And it is a chicken and egg thing. You allow the development sort of to move forward on a Class 6 road with the expectation that it's going to get improved to Class 5 standards, or which really kind of goes against our ordinance. Our ordinance says that you already have to have that Class 5 road before you can make improvements on it. So again, it's a chicken and an egg thing. I agree with you. There's a whole lot of potential here in this community for future development. And the idea is usually it's done the other way around. Someone actually gets you a Class 5 status, and then you begin to lay out lots, development of that sort. And back to what Brian was saying earlier, is whether or not we even have whether we have the ability to give the relief here. It's questionable, but as Mike's pointed out, I know I've sat in on 1 or 2 over the years that people have attempted to do something on Class 6 roads, and we've dealt with it here to some degree, but it's a questionable as to whether we have the authority. But as I said a few minutes ago, we're the only relief giving entity in the town.
Mhm.
Nobody else can do this. And we'll take it up. We've done it before. Any other questions or comments before we go to the questions? All right.
One last.
All right,
question,
sure.
I'm sorry.
No,
Has-
no,
Are you aware of any precedent where this has been granted with other properties?
Yeah, we've done it quite a few times over the years in class six. That's the whole
Yeah.
issue. Like you said, we brought it up. I've even brought the issue up several times. Mike Ben's sent out a few of them. And we've been doing this a long time. And
Yeah, because I've been
we've
seeing
set
this.
precedent. It doesn't mean that it's right, in
Sure.
my opinion,
Yeah,
but we're here.
yeah, okay.
Are we allowed to,
Yeah, I've
Are
been
we-
doing this for a little bit.
are we allowed to
so-
add, or are we past that point?
No, he didn't close the hearing,
Okay.
so you can.
no, that's true.
To, just thinking for what you had just asked, I mean, it has been done because literally on the other side of Talbot Hill, the Prescott's, I don't know the lot number, do you know offhand? It literally has been done because a portion of theirs went on to class 6 part of Talbot, same road. So it
Yeah,
has
we've
been
not
done.
only as a board done it on class 6 roads, it's one we've done it on Talbot Hill.
Right, that's what the point I just wanted to make, that I know it's
Yeah.
been done many of other times, many of other class 6 roads, but specifically, it kind of seems more like an apples to apples when you think about the
Yeah.
Talbot Hill to Talbot Hill. We're not talking Sycamore to Talbot, we're talking Talbot to Talbot, so.
Yeah, so you're unfortunately getting caught up in a debate of not precedent, because, you know, the chairman is correct, and so is Mr. Jasmine. We've said that already.
Mhm.
In my opinion, you're unfortunately caught up in a debate of boards that have authority and what authority they have. And this is a board, this is a judicial board.
Mhm.
Your zoning board is a judicial board, and we only have limited powers. And we keep kicking around this class 6 road issue. And if we had 2 or 3 miles of class 6 roads in Swansea, who cares? But we don't. We've got more class 6 miles than we do probably tarred miles. And it creates an issue. And so it's not you, it's not your property, it's not your problem. We can't make amendments to zoning ordinances. Only the planning board apparently can do that. And then they put it forth to the voters who say yes or no. At this point, there's no building on class 6 roads in Swansea.
Without the
But of course,
variance,
we are.
without the variance though,
Without a variance.
right?
Huh?
Conceivably, this is a cool question out of whether we.
Right.
Whether we even have to have it.
That's what we're.
Yeah, that's the whole issue. And this really is unfortunate that you just spent 40 minutes of your life that you'll never get back discussing an issue that.
All right, anything else, guys?
On the driveway regulations, I believe it was, it states that the zoning board can give a variance on class 6.
So we can give and planners' rights, we can give the variance, but we don't control driveways. Driveways are permitted by the planning board. Not fire chief, not fire department. It's the planning board. And not this board, DPW. Fire chief doesn't have a standing in it, so I'm kind of curious as to why he's offering it, but he offered an opinion and that's fine. But we don't issue driveway permits or guidance on them. Mr. Chairman.
All right, unless there's something else needs to be said, I will close the public hearing at this point in time. You're welcome to stay right there. Back to, do we have any comments? Questions? And you almost quickly make a comment.
I'm just.
All right, go to the questions. We're good. Okay. First question, could the variance be granted without being contrary to the public interest? I'm gonna go over to Brian on this one.
Yes.
Julian?
I am also a yes. Nobody had any opposition.
Adam?
I'll say yes as well, and always looking at it in the inverse. The public may benefit 300 feet of more maintained activity on a road that is not being maintained by the town had the variance been granted, so, yes.
And
I'm also a yes.
this is one that, that I sort of struggle with. I think if we denied this, it would not be necessarily a overwhelming benefit for the public if it was denied, and if it was approved, it's really, it probably wouldn't hurt the public interest a whole lot, but I'll be a reluctant yes on that as well. Second question, would the spirit of the ordinance be observed if the variance were granted? Adam?
Now, the spirit of the ordinance is, as it relates to this, well, it's clear, in terms of what's buildable and what's not in our ordinance. The spirit of the ordinance is not being observed in that respect. So no.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Ann?
Well, I'll say no as well, although I'm not sure that it's in our purview.
Okay.
So I'm debating on that.
All right. Brian?
I think the spirit of the ordinance is probably observed on this, although I don't believe the ordinance is germane to this body. So I'll say, yes, the spirit to me is.
If you give me a yes,
Yes.
I can hardly hear
Yep.
you when you hand the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jillian?
Yeah, I'm at the same quandary, we'll say, as everybody else,
Yeah.
I guess.
Sure.
I guess where they are taking on the maintenance of the road. In my mind, that does fall within the spirit of the ordinance, so I'm a yes.
That was well said.
And probably gonna go no on this, the spirit of the ordinance, because the spirit of the ordinance is that we wanted to, the town is looking to have development happen on roads that are meet class 5 standards and are maintained by the town. So I think that's sort of the gist of the variance, and we don't have this maintained by the town element to this. This becomes just at this point in time, you have to petition the town to take over any roads. And that's not done. So I don't think that personally, I don't think that the spirit of the ordinance is granted here. So we'll go to number 3, with granting the
I'm sorry,
variance.
I didn't get your vote.
It's a no.
Did you vote? Thank you.
I did. Yep. Would granting the variance do substantial justice? Always a fun question. And we'll give it to Ann.
Well, I'll be a yes on substantial justice, given the burden that they're willing to take on,
Mhm.
taking that burden away from, the entire, instead of the whole town being responsible for the road, they're taking it upon themselves.
Mhm.
So I would say that would be yes.
Right.
I struggle with this question, not just on this case, but on most in substantial justice.
Yeah.
To who?
Yeah.
It's not gonna give me any justice. I live miles away from it, so I couldn't care less. It's gonna be substantial justice to them. And I think that we don't have enough evidence that it's gonna create hardship against them or anybody else to say no. So the answer is yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Jillian?
I would also be a yes for the same reasons as Brian.
Adam?
I look at question 3 very similar to question 1
Mhm.
about public interest and justice. So again, I look at it from the inverse. Does that do an injustice to the rest of the town
Yeah.
granting this? And I don't see that being substantial in any way, shape, or form. And maybe basic improvement to that one section may be a benefit. So, and it definitely does substantial justice, as Brian requested, to the applicant, So from that perspective, yes, is my vote.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll vote yes on this one as well. Could the variance be granted without diminishing surrounding property values? Let's see. Jillian,
Yes.
Adam,
No evidence to the contrary, and it may actually have a positive effect, so yes.
sure, okay, Ann,
Yes,
Brian?
Yes.
And since again, we have no evidence that in front of us that anyone has stated that this would diminish surrounding property values, there's no evidence to that effect, so I also would vote yes. All right. Special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Was Brian?
Well, I'm gonna say by what evidence we have in front of us, which is all we can really go by, it's certainly the largest lot in the area. Landlocked per the town's definition of what a buildable road is. Be it smart or not. And directly across the street, I don't know how many feet that is, but maybe 200 feet away is a whole row of housing. So I'd say those are unique to this property.
Yes, I believe there are special conditions. Ann,
yes, for the same reasons.
Adam?
I would say yes, and I would again build upon the fact that the property itself is so close. You know, in terms of a uniqueness, I guess, in that its own respect, that it's within, in comparison to other lots, a lot closer than any other lot would be to a class 5 road. So that's somewhat unique, so yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
I'm struggling with this one, guys. Lots of property that sit on class 5 road, class 6 roads. Throughout, as we've stated, throughout the community. And if you look at this map we're looking at here, this one is closer to a class 5 road than the other ones, but they're all on class 5 roads. I mean, class 6 roads, all of these properties, they're all relatively large. Unlike the ones that are developed there along the Shore Road. So I would say no, I don't believe that there are special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. So, on. I guess we have, because it's a 4-to-1 vote, we have established that there are special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. So owing to that, owing to the fact that special conditions of property distinguish it from other properties in the area, do we agree that there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property? It's a mouthful, but I'll ask Ann to
Yes,
take it. Thank you. Adam?
Just having fun looking at the Dr. Seuss handwriting or.
Yeah, I know.
Verbs putting together here. Give me 1 second here.
Okay.
Keep passing, I'll make sure.
Sure. Go down. Jillian, what do you think here?
I'm at the same point as Adam.
you can pass it.
General public purpose.
I mean, the general public purpose of the ordinance, in my opinion, is that we're going to allow development on roads where we can get emergency services to, access to, and is on a road that the town controls the conditions of. That's sort of the ordinance as we see it, which is that no development happens on class 6 roads.
Yeah, my issue is that because that's most of them.
But we're not being asked if this lot can be built on or not. We're asking whether or not, you know.
Right, if we were being asked if they could build on the lot, we would turn down PSNH and Eversource for replacing poles. It's all on class 6 roads and.
Yeah, this is not even an aspect of the ordinance that we're supposed to be looking necessarily voting on,
That's
so.
what I'm saying.
That's what I'm stumbling on, it's not necessarily the words here, but how they apply to this particular application and our ordinance. We're in a position that's unique in its own right.
So they're essentially making it their portion of class 5 road because they're taking that burden onto themselves as individuals away from the entire town. So they're making it a class 5.
Well, we're making some assumptions.
I know.
We're
making
assuming the
assumptions
taxpayers
because this
even knew
hasn't-
what the hell a class 6 road was when we proposed it for the ordinance.
I mean,
Well, and by the way, when you pass this ordinance, there's no building in any class 6 road, which is half our freaking town. I don't think people knew that.
Staying on task here, I know we're.
Task. Brian,
I guess.
Pass,
task,
tasks,
get on task.
oh, I'm on task.
All right, I'll just take a stab then, if you want me to go back to, unless you'd like to go forward. I don't wanna
Go ahead,
take
Anna.
your-
Right ahead.
I'll say yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Ann is yes, Adam is yes, Jillian.
Just feel like we're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
I'll say yes as well.
okay, Brian?
Yeah, so yes.
Well, since I didn't think there were special conditions of property that distinguish from other in the area, I'll think I have to sort of not end up with no here. And then lastly, is the proposed use a reasonable one? Jillian?
Yeah.
Adam?
I think taking a lot and putting a home on it is a very reasonable use for a piece of property, so yes.
Okay, Ann?
Yes,
Brian?
Yes.
And then I also think that this proposed use residential is a reasonable one. So we have met this unanimously, but we have met the criteria of A1 and A2, so we really don't have to go to B.
Sounds good.
We just have to move on this request. Anyone in? Just to give you a scorecard, we were unanimous on number 1. We did not believe by a 3-2 vote that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed if the variance were granted. We all agreed that this variance, however, would do substantial justice should it be approved. We were unanimous in the variance being granted without diminishing property values. We were 4-1. Four of us agreed that the special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area. 1, yours truly did not. Similarly, with owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, 4 of us did agree that there's not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of this ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property. That was 4-1. And then finally, we all agreed that the proposed use is a reasonable one. So that's the scorecard.
I'll take a stab.
Okay, thank you, Brian. What do you got?
I'll make a proposal,
Motion?
motion,
Thank you.
proposal for the motion. With an emotion. That the application for variance section 4, article A3 be approved. With a notation that department heads need to be careful making suggestions to potential landowners that may be outside of their jurisdiction. Creates a false,
What's the condition of the approval?
with a notation.
Oh, just a notation? Okay.
All right. That's your motion?
It's my motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We moved and seconded to grant the variance
Yes.
to do what's being asked to be done. Any questions on the motion? Any comments or questions to
Could you
the?
just clarify the department head thing again?
He
Maybe you can just
said
take it
fire
out.
chief-
I'll deal with it separately because it was inappropriate to be in here. And I think
Okay, so-
sometimes department heads in their eagerness to be assistant
Yeah,
to landowners potentially say things that then landowners think they have to comply with when they don't. So I just think we need to be careful. So just remove
I-
them.
I could do it.
Anything else before we vote? Motion to approve is on the floor. It's been seconded. I think we all understand what we're being asked. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
3-2, we win.
So, there are 2 no's,
Yes,
Rogers and Mulhern.
yes.
No.
No.
What?
no,
I'm sorry, Keith.
Yep.
Mulhern and Tebow.
Yes. That's it. I guess according to.
What you do is figure out how to turn it into a flashlight. Zoom. Go ask him.
Michael, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Our second event of the evening, that would be ZBA 22-004, a special exception application. Ms. Lencioni requests to grant a special exception to section 3A, Article B of the zoning ordinance to construct a detached accessory dwelling unit, or a DADU, in an existing outbuilding at 2 Forest Ave. The subject property is shown at tax map 73, lot 30, located in the business district. What do we got, Sarah, from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's pretty cut and dry. We have a house, a single family residence, the business has previously,
We have a house.
we have a house,
That would be
there's an
selected.
outbuilding that used to serve as an office for construction building, and a portion of the outbuilding is being proposed to be turned into a detached accessory dwelling unit. It will be within the size limitations proposed for a DADU. I think it came in 130 square feet approximately. It's on private septic. What more do you want to know? Like,
Anything from department heads? Any?
Mike Jasmine has brought a memo forward and no one else had any comments on it. Oh, and the principal dwelling unit on the property is owner occupied and is going to maintain that.
Okay. So, it's Lencioni?
We're not the owners.
Okay,
My wife's mother is the owner.
She's
Okay.
92.
We live next door though.
you live next door.
Yeah, we're butters.
So this is the actual former site of Ingram's offices.
Ingram Construction, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know Jeff, I know Steve, and so forth. So I visited that property over the years, so. And they moved up on Route 12 in Westmoreland?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing here. And maybe you folks can tell us a little bit more than what we've heard so far about what you're looking to do and provide us with any information you think would be helpful.
So it would be potentially rented to a relative.
Mhm.
Actually, on top of that, I'll help my mother, who's 92, pay her property taxes.
Mhm.
And also there'll be a second set of eyes on the property. Because the construction company has moved,
Right.
you know, she feels a little, even though we're next door, it would be helpful. She's very, very positive about it and would like this to happen.
Okay. And we may have other questions as we move through this. This is a public hearing, and certainly anyone who is interested in providing information on this request who's here tonight, raise your hand. Anyone on Zoom can also raise their hand, and we're monitoring that as well. Any questions? Yes,
Thank you, I'm here, I raised my hand.
okay, you just give us your name.
Hi, Dan Lee. And I live across the street at 3 Forest Avenue.
Okay,
And I-
Spell the last name, sir.
I was hiding.
Beverly has a question for you.
You just spell the last name for me.
Yes, capital O, apostrophe, capital L, EARY.
EARY.
Yes,
Thank you.
Excellent.
so
Yes.
I live across the street at 3 Forest Avenue, and I'm here to speak in favor of this.
Okay,
I think it would be a good thing. They're nice neighbors. Mrs. Ingram is old, and so I think it'd be a good thing for our end of the street.
okay. Thank you, appreciate that. The public hearing will remain open. If you have more comments to say, or if anyone else here wants to weigh in as we start to deliberate over this, feel free until we close the public hearing.
Could you come point out to me
Yes,
where you are, where she is, and where you're building, or where you're doing here?
Yeah, this is her house.
Yeah,
This is it's kind of covered by a big tree, but their property is here. The alternative, this is just a garage, and we live here.
okay.
And Dan lives
Yeah.
across the street. Yeah.
Across the street.
Okay. So, thank you. Hey, you were easy with chairs over here. So he said, this is where mom lives. This is the garage that's remaining, and that's where the dad was gonna be.
Okay.
They live here. The damn guy lives here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you. Ryan.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Comments while we have time? No?
Afraid to say anything, Sarah, so this is.
You generally get yourself in trouble.
And I'm reading through this quickly. but
Yeah, sure.
we have this handy list of questions, 1 through 10. That granting a special exception, we need to find that 1 through 10 meet that. Are there any of these that do not fit or fill in?
Special,
So for the special exception, for an ADU, the ZBA must find some back in here. 1, the ADU shall maintain the continuity of the principal dwelling unit. 2, no more than one accessory dwelling. 3, it's no greater than 1,000 feet, and so on and so forth. Are we aware that any of these 10 requirements are not met by the proposed? Like 2
I'm just
bedrooms,
double checking
No.
with Brian.
Just
so maybe.
930 square feet.
yeah, so I've been checking them off this.
Yep.
There we go.
The only one on here that, in my opinion, would be a question would be the septic, and the applicants have spoken to that in their application to ensure that the septic design will conform to the added bedroom. And then the others that could be in question are just future use by not subdividing the garage off of, well, not the garage, but the dadding off of the main portion of the lot.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns before we move to questions? Close the public hearing. Questions? Anything else to add from your perspective at this point? talk to your friend in the back. Because once I close the public hearing, you can't say, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. You know,
Well, my mother doesn't want that particular building to go to disrepair.
Yeah.
So it would be a positive for the property
Mhm.
as well as the relative who is planning on moving in.
Thank you.
And I'll suggest that where the building is situated, there's plenty of room.
Hmm.
There's, you know, there's a lot of parking space. There used to be a lot of cars there.
Mhm.
And so I don't see any downside to doing this.
Thank you. Helpful. Anything else from the board? No? You good, Brian?
I'm good.
Okay, Kelly, you good? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments before we move to the questions? Hearing none. Go to our questions. Is the proposed use similar to one or more of the uses already authorized in the district, and is an appropriate location for such a use? And
Yes, we've had several recent ones where they've taken existing buildings and turned them into the dadu and continue to use the additional space for other things.
right. Adam?
I would say yes, everything that's been presented seems to fit that, those requirements, so yes.
Okay. Joe?
Yep.
Mr. Brian?
Yes.
Okay, I will agree. Certainly residential use is very similar to what we was already authorized in the district, and I believe this would be an appropriate location for that additional residential use. Number two, would such approval, do we agree that such approval would not be reduce the value of any property within the district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood? Brian?
Well, I don't think it will reduce. I think based on the evidence that we've heard, the business is moved, the building's sitting there empty. It's gonna go into disrepair if something doesn't get done with it, which will then reduce the property value for sure.
Okay.
Injurious, obnoxious to the neighborhood. It doesn't look like you can even see it from the street or the neighborhood, so.
You agree that
Yes.
such approval would not reduce the
I
value,
do.
and it would nor be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive?
I do.
All right, Joe?
Yes, it would not.
Okay, thank you. Adam?
I would say yes, and it seems that, you know, based on testimony, this is very positively felt and seen by the neighborhood.
Yeah. Even have testimony to that effect. And
Yes,
I concur. So yes, do we agree that there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to the vehicles or pedestrians? Should this be approved, Joe?
Yeah, it sounds like there'll actually be less traffic since it used to be a business.
Yeah. Adam?
I would say yes, it seems like adequate driveways and so forth seem to be on the property already, and this is a reduced use as Sean stated.
And
yes,
Brian?
Yes.
And I concur. Do we also agree that adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use? And
yes,
Adam?
Yes, testimony seems to be supporting that, yes.
Joe?
Yeah.
Brian? Okay. We've answered all the questions. Here to be unanimous in this particular case, so I entertain a motion on this request.
I'll go for it. I make a motion to grant the request for a special exception as so submitted.
For 2 Forest Ave. Second,
I'll second that.
thank you. Ann. Moved and seconded to approve the special exception for a detached accessory dwelling unit at the property located at 2 Forest Ave in Swansea. Any question on the motion? Hearing, seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're good?
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
It's okay, look it up.
Oh, yeah,
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Skedaddle as necessary.
Appreciate it.
I know we talked about this before, but this is to me, the perfect use of this particular, potential for a property.
Oh,
If someone's got,
DAD.
I mean, the whole storyline was just exactly what I think the statute was intended for.
I think so too. I think so too. And I think we have a real, Mike is a real proponent of accessory dwelling units. He's spoken to others about it, and it's a great way for the community to get additional housing units without any public outlay.
Right.
It's all private. It's usually reusing something that already exists. So, yeah, it's good.
And getting, these little family unit, people moving all different directions and giving people a place to set roots. I love it.
Good. All right, now we'll move on to our third public hearing of the evening.
Jasmine, for his input and his memos, because it means a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, ZBA number 22-006. Variance application, Mr. Latini on behalf of East Coast Evangelical Conference doing business as Pilgrim Pines request a variance, section 4. Well, there's an article in here that's not noted, but article something, section A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a pavilion within the 30-foot front setback at 220 West Shore Road. This subject property shown on tax map 46, lot 3. We'll see, because I don't think I did last time. We'll definitely see Jillian for Bill as we move forward.
Hey, we're gonna discuss Article 3.
So why don't you, Chad, take it over, let us know what's happening, the representative of Pilgrim Pines here as well, and apparently we have a couple of abutters, so what are we looking to do here? Why do you need some relief?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brandon, civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'll be representing Pilgrim Pines this evening with their zoning board variance application. With me tonight is Jim Condap with Pilgrim Pines. So hopefully together, between the two of us, we can answer any questions that the board may have pertaining to this application.
I'm sorry, could I have the gentleman's name again?
Sure.
Jim Condap, CONDAP.
Thank you.
So we are before you this evening requesting a variance from section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance, which pertains to the 30-foot front setback from the frontage of a property, and that's outlined within the rural agricultural district. The variance that we're requesting is seeking relief from that setback to 22 feet in order to construct an event pavilion on the subject property. The subject property is known as tax map parcel 46-3. It consists of 6.5 acres of land. It has about 1,771 feet of frontage along West Shore Road. So it's got a great deal of frontage along West Shore Road. And it also has a significant amount of frontage along Swansea Lake to the point of approximately 1,525 feet. The plan that I have before you right now is kind of a color up of an existing conditions plan. And what it shows is a portion of the site that we're proposing to construct this event pavilion, if you will. Currently, the property is situated on the east side of West Shore Road. So this kind of the green hatched area or the highlighted area is just a portion of the property. In fact, the remainder of it is shown on the tax map that we submitted within the application.
You had said it's about a 6-acre parcel?
6.5 acres.
How much are we looking at just right on your picture here, approximately?
This is probably approximately 2.5 acres.
Okay.
If I had to guess, of the entire property, maybe 3.
Okay.
So as the property has some improvements on it. There's a patio area here, this circular area. And then there's an existing gravel area, which we have highlighted in yellow on this plan. Currently, this yellow area is a location where tents are put up, temporary tents they're put up annually. and they function as an event area where people may dine outside, picnic under, there's arts and crafts that could take place within the tents, under the tents. And what my client has found is that over the last couple of years, especially during this, COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of interest in being outside and being under the tents, and it's really proven to be something that should be permanent. The tents are, less desirable. They're not as nice. What's being proposed is a timber frame pavilion type structure. So it would be a very nice structure, which would replace that need. And so what we did is we took a look at the property and we essentially said, where is the right place to construct that? Currently, we looked at this gravel area here, but when you balance the setbacks, what we would consider really the spirit and intent of the ordinance, there is a setback off the lake, and then in the state setback off the lake for an accessory structure, which is what this would be considered, is 20 feet. That 20-foot setback gets quite a ways into that gravel area. And then this pink line here represents the 30-foot setback off of West Shore Road. So when we started taking a look at this area, we found that that probably wasn't the best place to locate this pavilion in order to balance the regulations. So what my client has decided to do is to position that pavilion a little bit to the south where there's more room, where it makes more sense, and we can provide that 20 feet, an improvement from the lake. As you can see, the footprint of the gravel area is pretty close to the lake. So we'd be able to make some improvements, move some of the impervious areas further away from the lake. We'd be able to do some stormwater improvements, but unfortunately, we still need some relief from that front setback, 8 feet to be exact. So this is the plan that shows essentially what we're proposing. So we tried to highlight this gravel area here just to give you some reference, but what we're proposing to do is to build a pavilion structure here, situated a little further south. We've positioned that so that it fits within some existing improvements that are there. Currently, there is a hydrant located on site here. It's a drafting hydrant for fire supply, so we want to maintain that. Existing access road to some of the camps that are positioned on this property. This is just one of the camp structures here. So what this plan shows is essentially what we've submitted to the state for the shoreline permit, and we've gone through a preliminary review on the state level, and we have formally submitted the application. Reviews from them currently are quite favorable, but it's under a technical review. And the reason why the reviews are favorable is because we've made improvements, right? We've taken that impervious area where the gravel currently exists. We're going to revegetate that area, basically turn it into a lawn area. There might be some picnic tables, situated in there and so on. But there's an overall reduction in impervious area on this site as a result of this project. In addition to that, just from a good design standpoint, we're proposing, some stone infiltration trenches adjacent to the drip line of the structure, the pavilion structure, and that would be conveyed or routed to a small rain garden that we're also proposing, which is a portion of some of the landscape improvements that are part of this proposal. So in the end, I think the hope is that it creates a real functional space, but also balances the regulations appropriately in the town. And that's really what we tried to focus on when we articulated the 5 criteria in our application. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions that the board may have at this time, or I can certainly go through the 5 criteria and touch on, the technical elements of each of those points.
I think it might be helpful, maybe just to pause here.
Okay.
Maybe just ask a few questions now, and not that we can't revisit, but
Sure.
And then you can go through the criteria. Would have any questions?
Well, I have one that's interesting. Somebody else picked up on it too. You said 20-foot setback from the water. I think Swansea has a 125-foot setback.
That's correct. You do to a principal structure.
Yes.
which this is not. This is an accessory structure. So technically, that 125-foot setback does not apply to the structure, this particular structure,
Because it's not a dwelling.
because it's not a principal structure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And I think that's actually touched on in the staff memo for tonight's meeting too.
It is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ann? Any question?
Well, the question I have, so presently, the party tents or whatever you have up, are they up 6 months out of the year and they're just a bunch of them in the area that you were previously using?
Yeah, so I think is there 2 of them that get put up there? Yeah, so there's 2 tents, pretty large tents that get put up in this area. And they, because of the footprint of the gravel area where they're located, those structures, those tents, temporary structures
Right.
are actually closer to the road than what we're proposing here. And they're closer to the lake.
Right.
But yes,
And the water just comes off willy-nilly the way,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll be no more tenants.
There will be no more temporary tents. Correct. In that location. No, I'm just kidding. I don't.
They can legally put up
Is that
tents other
what-
places.
Great, yeah, they could, so the tents could theoretically be the whole entire thing if you want, right? Because they're temporary.
That's not how it works.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Oh,
Other questions from the board?
No, I just found the statement in there. Thanks. I think a little bit before.
No problem. Good question.
So that pavilion, what's the size of the pavilion?
So the pavilion is about just shy of 2,000 square feet in size. It's 32 feet wide by 62 feet long. And it would have a slab, there would be a slab, and then it would be like a timber frame structure. So I think it would
Open air?
open air. Yeah, I think it would be a very nice looking amenity. And it would obviously, the benefit of having something permanent too is the landscape, everything is undisturbed around it. And when you bring in tents, backing trucks in there, you're setting up tents, and you just tend to be disturbing the area. Tents of that size, there's a lot of staking, and so on. So this would just allow the area, certainly in close proximity to the lake, to be more formal, and the landscaping to be on the site.
Yeah, so where you're catching the water in the rain garden, I refer to it as. The structure right beneath it, because that's a lot of water being displaced year round. Is that gonna catch it all to prevent flooding from happening?
Sure, no, that's a great question. So in the design plan shows all the grading and stuff associated with these improvements. So basically, that rain garden area is a little like kind of it's a bowl area, and it has a berm on it that has a little spillway that if water, if we get large storm events, it'll direct the storm water, to the lake. But if the water, the first flush would be treated at that point, which is really the important element of stormwater treatment. So it's a great question. The design has been done so that we're not going to compromise any existing improvements.
That was normal. We would
I'm
just,
afraid it is. We're talking to the select board about getting it not normal.
okay. When we have to evacuate or.
It's the air compressor that operates the valve for the dry system and the fire extinguishing system.
sometimes it goes wumpa, 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 wumpa.
It's actually attached to the lines versus on the ground.
That's that.
It's not great.
That's okay.
And I've read these before, but is the pavilion gonna have like lights? So have lights inside, it's gonna have, are you gonna have like cooking equipment, stoves, things like that?
I don't believe there'll be cooking equipment, but I would imagine there'd probably be some lights and maybe some outlets for, crafts and things like that, just for convenience more so than anything else. it would be, we would recommend that. And honestly haven't gone to that level of detail yet on the project because that's probably more
Well, that's
part
down
of
the
the building
road,
permit.
down the road
Yeah.
stuff, but yeah. So where, as far as people getting to it, are they
Yeah.
all walking? They're all,
Yes, so that's a great question. So currently there's kind of a pedestrian walk path here. And what we're proposing is to maintain the west side of that path. Like, right now it's all gravel, but we
Right.
would maintain that west side. And that would be a connection from this existing patio area, which is really nice.
right,
There's some seating and stuff here. That would be a connection over to here to the pavilion. Then there's also a stairway right there that goes up. So really kind of tying in all those pedestrian connectivity elements as well.
But not by a lot of people are driving to use this. pavilion.
No, it's very,
Some other point on the property.
yeah, walking. There is some parking, along West Shore Road here, but generally speaking, people are staying on site and walking, to this amenity.
Adam.
I mean, this may be an obvious question. But I'm gonna ask it anyway. The setback you're asking to have relief from is 8 feet. The structure that you're proposed is 60 by 32 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And 60 being the long side of the,
Yeah.
facing the lake, and
32 by 62?
32 by 62.
By 62.
is there a reason it couldn't be 24 feet by 60 feet, obviating this?
It's just not enough space, when you start laying out tables and stuff like that on the inside, it gets really narrow. We actually talked about this. And so that's the reason why we left it at this size. And it also is it's good dimensions for the truss work and the timber structure and just the building layout. So this is the desired size because it's an area that they know will function well. It's been functioning well over the last few years. It's a great question because it's something that we did talk about. But we really tried to, consolidate the footprint. And those dimensions are what works best for the structure and best for, kind of maximum utilization. For example, if we went narrow and long, it just wouldn't allow people to kind of come together inside, that structure as easily with table layouts or whatever that might be.
And then just one more question. Does the layout of this mimic what was existing in terms of the temporary tent area size?
It does pretty
Is that the
close.
rationale behind what makes sense?
It is, and then you look at, foundations, so you have the structures, so you might have a 6 by 6 timber post instead of, metal posts. And then when you think of a structure like this, there's a certain portion of the sides that really, if the weather is inclement, they don't get used. So the functional space gets smaller inside the building, like for example, if it's raining, but all of those were accounted for. But yes, this is generally the same size as the space that was utilized for temporary tents. Would you agree?
I would.
Thank you.
Other questions? Members of the public. This is your time. If you have anyone here who wants to speak to this application, this is an opportunity to do so. We do have an open.
We did have one comment that came in after the packet.
Okay. This is from Rachel Elkins Conservation Committee.
Yes. It's on the department head review form, but she's not the department head.
Okay, well, there is some, it appears to be, I'll read what was handwritten, some handwritten thing from Rachel. One is that it appears that setbacks by the water is too close, too much shoreland is included. And then
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes.
just have the name of the person who provided that?
Rachel Elkins, our Conservation Committee
Thank you.
member, apparently.
Yeah.
Then secondly, there is too much construction of buildings in the area already, and mostly by East Coast and Evangelical Conference, a nonprofit. A building could still be built and conform to the 30-foot setback. So it kind of goes to, I think, what you were just asking about the size and the layout. I don't know if there's anything there you want to respond to.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to respond to that, because I think it's a little bit contrary to actually what our plan is. Right now, the gravel area, gets pretty close to within 10 feet of the high water mark of the lake. We're improving that to 20. So we're actually moving the impervious area and the improvements away from the lake. What does that mean? Well, it means that we're fighting with the setback from the road. So when you take that structure that fits in that footprint right now, but we're close to the lake and we're close to the road, which is why, we've tried to shift that in the best location possible so that we maximize the distance from the lake. And I unfortunately think if she was able to be here this evening, I'd be able to articulate and share with her all of the improvements that are being made, reduction in impervious area, stormwater improvements that don't exist, additional landscaping, all of those things the Conservation Commission should want, because it's consistent with state shoreline permitting practices, and also very consistent with, local, typical of goals and objectives for development along lakefront properties. So I think there may have been some misunderstanding because what she's stating is actually what we're proposing. And we comply with, any coverage requirements, things of that nature, relative to the state stormwater permit. This does require a shoreline permit. As I stated before, we've gone through, a review with that department. In fact, we had the structure kind of shown in the existing footprint, and they told us they would rather not give us relief from the setback to the lake, the accessory structure setback to the lake, which kind of guided us in this direction, and is why we're, positioning that structure currently in its current location.
Are you meaning to bring in any sort of fill, or is that already level where the pavilion is going?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, the nice part about this portion of the lot, it's relatively flat from the gravel access road here all the way to this patio area here. So there'll be very minimal, site disturbance for construction. We do show the area of disturbance as it's kind of a pixeled area on the plan. That area has to be quantified for the state shoreline permit. So that's all been detailed, certainly for this project, but that's a good question. Yeah, it's really flat, so it fits in really nice.
May I just ask, just for the sake of the record, so the setback relief is for the setback to the road, not to the lake?
Correct.
So that you were meeting the setback to the lake for an accessory building, the structure?
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure that's in the
Thank you.
minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear to be, but I'm only seeing a portion of the road. This isn't going to create any sightline issues for anyone exiting or utilizing West Shore Road, or exiting or entering this particular property itself.
That's correct. Yeah, there will be no sightline issues. Currently, West Shore Road is up in this location here. Generally, sightlines are taken about 10 feet back from the travel way, is where you can expect a driver to be sitting in a car. 3'9" is the standard height. It's very flat through here, and this building will be set way, well into the site, so it won't create any sightline or safety issues. Yeah.
That section of road right through there, that of course is a class 6 untown maintained road, correct?
I I believe
This
this
is
is
just
class,
coming down off Christian Hill down on the west shore.
this is all class 5.
It's not winter maintained, but it is class 5.
Well, it is class 5 to there,
It is, it's just not winter maintained,
not winter maintained.
right, just to make it a little extra.
So I'm just trying to geographically put myself coming down the backside of
You're coming
Christian
down,
Hill,
you take a right,
Take a
you
right.
can, as soon as you take that right, you can start to see this,
right there.
this area. Yeah, it's just to the right of the beach.
Yeah, the beach actually starts right about here
Okay.
and goes this way.
Right.
So was it also the same owner right across the street from it?
That's correct.
Any members of the public who wish to speak? I'll make sure you get your tickets. Okay? Unless I do close the public hearing, we can't. So, any other questions?
Close the public hearing.
What's that?
Did you close the? public
No, I did not
Oh, I'm
yet.
sorry.
Not yet. No, I just was saying, if I do. Any other questions from the board? It's an ad chat. What we're doing here, Jim.
I mean, I'd be happy to touch on our criteria. if the
Oh, yeah, I
board-
do want you to get to that, for sure. I want to move into that one. Go ahead.
So the first criteria is granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because, and we stated in the application, the proposed event pavilion would be constructed in an open, improved lawn area and would not require extensive grading or manipulation of the surrounding land. Stormwater management would be implemented to reduce runoff to the adjacent lake. The existing gravel area where tents are currently set up for outdoor functions will be removed and restored with native vegetation, basically loamed and seeded upon improving upon the existing conditions. For this reason, we believe a reduction of the front setback by 8 feet will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. And therefore, granting this variance would not be contrary to the public interest. And I would just state again that, for a good portion of the year, maybe it's, 6-7 months, tents can be viewed on this site closer to the road than what we're proposing. So I don't think that, I think this will be an improvement as a result of, hopefully the approval of this project. So certainly not contrary to the public interest. Would you like me to continue, Mr. Chairman?
Please do, unless there's any questions of the board.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Ian.
The red line that goes straight through the proposed pavilion and through the patio area, is that the 8 foot that we're talking about?
That's that represents a 30-foot setback, but yes, this is the 8 feet right here on that western portion of the building that we're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the little patio that has the seating is already
Correct.
in an 8 foot setback, basically.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a surface treatment, so it's not a structure.
Right,
Yeah,
I get it. Okay.
Yeah, there are improvements
Yep.
within that setback.
All right.
Including the gravel area that we'll be removing in the walkways.
And is that paved? The seating area there?
It's a
Next to the
patio, it's a block.
Block, so the water that hits it is draining down into it.
It can, yeah.
Okay.
Adam?
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder, this doesn't pertain to this particular question that you're presenting. The primary structure, and I'm struggling with the definition here as it relates to this structure that's being proposed.
All right.
I'm just thinking my first board meeting here, many years ago at this point, was with a case, not that we're comparing things, but it was a case that had another structure that was proposed that was a carport. That was much smaller in dimension in terms of size. And we're talking maybe a 1-car carport.
Right.
And dimensionally, I can't see a difference between that and this in terms of, is it the use, the fact that you're not parking a car versus just struggling why is this not considered a primary structure on this property? Or why is this structure not defined as a primary structure?
Well, I'm not in a position to interpret your ordinance, but I think that, town officials have agreed that it's an accessory structure. And to that point, the state actually considers it an accessory structure. And I think it's primarily because it's not the primary or principal structure on the lot. And that would likely be, you know, the cabins in this case, which are situated further to the south. Those would be primary structures. People stay there, you know, there's living quarters in there, there's associated septic systems. This is accessory to that use or to those structures. That's the way the state interprets it, and it's my understanding that's the way.
I've always liked to be, you know, educated on exactly the nuances of all this, but
This is the same since you started, this didn't change.
not to my knowledge. You know, maybe one word or two, but you know, so just thinking in terms of what this use was, it was, you know, just they go back to this particular case where there was a, you know, carport that was accessory to the building that was attached. No one was living in it. Dimensionally, it was the same, you know, type of structure. Okay, if everyone, you know, our town officials and so forth deem it a non-primary structure, then continue.
I thought it was a great question, because I was struggling with the same thing, because
So it's a
if
massive
I look
thing.
at all 8, 10, 12, however many acres they have, and all the dozens of buildings they have, maybe it's not a primary structure for other parcels that they own. But based on the size and use, it's maybe a primary structure for this 6-acre piece, but
It's pretty big.
I would say it's the biggest building on the property, on the lot,
certainly on that lot.
or proposed building. I don't mean to interrupt your flow, just there was a stumbling block for me and I needed to address it.
It's interesting, our zoning ordinance does define an accessory building, which is a freestanding building incidental to primary structure for any customarily incidental, related, and clearly subordinate to a principal or main use established on the same lot or premises. Unfortunately, we don't have, it doesn't give us a definition for a primary structure. It tells us what an accessory building
The
is.
definition of primary structure that they fall back to is the state definition, which I think.
Thank you. Primary structure, which is, this is a state definition, means a structure as defined in paragraph 22 of this section that is central to the fundamental use of the property and is not accessory to the use of another structure on the same premises.
I mean, is it not both those things, fundamental to the use of the property and an accessory to other structures in the facility?
6
I
months out
don't
of
think,
the year.
I don't think it is. I mean, I think the reality is if you didn't have the people staying here, you wouldn't have the people utilizing the pavilion. People aren't going to be on site to utilize a pavilion unless they're on site. So that's the camp, camps would be the primary structure, because that has to exist in order for the pavilion, you know, to be necessitated, essentially. And so that's my understanding of the definition. Again, the size of that structure is, you know, if we were here 3 years ago, we'd probably be talking about something significantly smaller. But because of, you know, the kind of change of times and people like to still social distance and be outside and really, that requires more space. I mean, if you can imagine, you know, things might be spread out further. So, you know, unfortunately, the focus on size is sort of a function of the environment that we're dealing with nowadays. It's not necessarily what we would have thought would have been necessary today. The good part is we're making an improvement. We're making the impervious area less. We're addressing landscaping, we're addressing stormwater. So at the end of the day, assuming we're successful here this evening, this property will be improved substantially and brought into conformance under current practices on, you know, on those levels. Despite what might, you know, feel like a large structure, I think once that's built, it's actually going to fit in quite nicely, sets down from the road. You know, it's not, you know, real prominent, it won't be a big prominent structure. In fact, I think it would be kind of the contrary, because, you know, certainly they'll be sensitive to blocking any views of the lake and stuff from any of the properties on the other side of the road.
So 22 says of our RSA, structure means anything constructed or erected for the support, shelter, or enclosure of persons, animals, goods, or property of any kind with a fixed permanent location on or in the ground, exclusive of fences.
That doesn't define accessory or primary.
When you read the definition of primary, Keith, didn't it give deference to use as well as actual structure?
Yeah,
Primary structure means a structure is defined by paragraph 22, which I just read, of this section that is central to the fundamental use of the property and is not accessory to the use of another structure on the same premises.
Right, so it's not just the structure itself, but it's also its use.
Right.
So to Chad's point, that people wouldn't be using that if they were using primarily the other structures. The other structure, whichever one is the primary, you would label the primary structure, not only because actually have a primary per se, but there's certainly structures that are more primary, like where you check in, where you sleep, would be more primary than would be.
Restrooms.
Right, than would be, a pavilion.
Right, doesn't have any facilities in it, there's no, other than maybe a little electricity.
Yeah, it's
There's
just
no
open air.
heat, there's no, you know.
Yeah.
To that end, you wouldn't be parking in a garage if there was nobody living in the house. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Use
speak
case.
to a different application.
I understand. It's just that the reason why I brought it up, because there was a lot of, heat between that particular application and it brought the committee into court. And, trying to avoid any situation where we can talk through, these things before.
It's very common for someone to come into our office, want to buy land, and then they want to put a garage on it, which is always kind of tricky. Because you're not supposed to have an accessory structure that's not accessory to anything.
Sure.
So then you gotta look at use and other things. So we've made exceptions here and there for specific uses of specific structures. But it's the primary versus accessory. It's always kind of wonky.
Mhm.
I think he raises a good point. I think it's a good conversation because, what we've done in the past, even though this is the law, it's ambiguous on purpose, right? You're supposed to have some room for defining your application of the law. And when you know better, you do better. And I think sometimes in the past, we have made decisions based on evidence in front of us, the understanding we had at the time. And, okay. Other board members.
We can move on, I guess.
Okay.
Great.
Number 2, granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance because in the application, we stated the construction of the pavilion will provide for a balance of the regulations. As I stated earlier, we're proposing an 8-foot reduction from the front setback along West Shore Road, but we are improving setbacks to the lake. We're also reducing impervious surfaces, and we're making stormwater improvements. Currently, the existing gravel area, which is where the tents are currently situated, is larger than the proposed pavilion and is much closer to the lake, and is also closer to the property line or right-of-way line with West Shore Road. This proposal will remove the existing gravel area and restore it with native vegetation, essentially loamed and seeded. And the new pavilion will be positioned more appropriately within the existing natural constraints and setbacks. The pavilion would also incorporate other improvements such as the infiltration trenches along the drip edge. And then for larger storms, that would be routed to the rain garden area, which would ultimately discharge in larger storm events to the lake itself. So we've incorporated stormwater improvements, which will improve upon the existing conditions. The project will allow for reasonable use of the property and will have no measurable negative impacts on the lake and also to the public. This proposal will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. And for all of those reasons, we believe granting the variance would observe the spirit and intent of the ordinance.
Questions?
Granting the third criteria, granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting this variance would allow the landowner reasonable use of the property, especially since the current area is already used for the use that's being proposed. The proposed pavilion will be consistent with the character of the surrounding lots in the area. The variance would do substantial justice because it would allow for the productive use of the property while also providing responsible growth in the community. Responsible meaning will allow us to make improvements to the property while maintaining this use that already occurs on the property. We believe that a denial of this variance would result in an injustice to the applicant, as there would be no apparent gain to the general public. Moving on, the fourth criteria, granting the variance would not diminish the value of surrounding properties because this proposal, again, consists of constructing a brand new timber framed pavilion in an area that's already utilized for outdoor events. Historically, portable tents have been installed on site to provide for the same use functions. A more formal pavilion in this location would be, in our opinion, a significant improvement to the aesthetics of the site, especially as compared to the utilization of temporary tents. The use is consistent with the zoning and will have no negative impacts, in our opinion, on surrounding properties. Therefore, we do not believe that this proposal would have any negative impact on the value of surrounding properties. Our experience typically has been that new construction can actually have a positive impact on surrounding properties. And it's important to point out that the entity that owns the land on the other side of the road is the same owner. So there's not going to be any detrimental impacts of any kind, view-wise or anything like that, typical stuff that you deal with on lake properties in this case. So we believe we meet that criteria. Moving on to the unnecessary hardship. This is the shoreline permit plan that I have on the board this evening. And I think that this plan in itself identifies some unique features of the property. You can see the property is very narrow along its length, if you will. It doesn't have great depth from the lake to the road right away. So any construction in that zone has to be done carefully. We think that in this particular instance, the existing improvements on the land being the gravel area here, it already exists. So you already have an improved area. This is a unique project because we're looking to take those existing improvements and make them less. And what I mean by that is we're reducing the impervious cover and we're positioning those impervious areas more appropriately on the site. Unfortunately, the balance, and that's kind of the key word, and I think is always the struggle that zoning boards generally have, is what is the balance of a project? If we give a little bit here, are we gaining something? Are we balancing the goals and objectives of the regulations? In this case, the balance is we're asking for relief, an 8-foot relief to the front setback, but you're gaining more than 8 feet to the lake. You're gaining the stormwater improvements and you're gaining, a reduction in impervious area. So we don't see, any benefit to a denial in this particular case, because that 8-foot reduction doesn't yield any negative impacts to the surroundings. It doesn't yield any safety impacts, such as lines of sight. So when we start taking a look at items like that, we believe that as you look through the hardship criteria, there's really 3 things that you have to address. One is this reasonable? Well, we believe this is reasonable for all of those details. The reduction in impervious area, no safety issues, definitely not altering the character of the neighborhood. The use has always been here, stormwater improvements, etc. We also believe that the special conditions of this property do distinguish it from other properties in the area. And those special conditions really are the existing conditions. And, you know, the fact that we're trying to maintain a use and balance out some of this stuff. And the special conditions are, you know, the geometry of the site, the fact that it is a lakefront property, and really on lakefront properties, the lake side is the important side. Generally speaking, that's the side that we see communities and permitting agencies hold more weight to. And so that's what we're trying to do here, because the state's kind of guided us in this direction. And it's landed us, you know, before the board accordingly. And then we don't believe there's any fair and substantial relationship that exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property for all of those details that we just went through. Yes, there's a 30-foot setback. If this was a raw piece of land and there was no improvements, then it would be a harder case to say, hey, we want an 8-foot reduction to build a brand new pavilion. But when you have an area that has a gravel area that's already encroaching beyond that 8 foot, and then is already encroaching closer to the lake, you know, we think those are special provisions that this property has, and we're making improvements to all of those conditions. So we believe we meet the 3 criteria of the hardship in this application. We believe this property is unique and does address all those criteria. We hope the board would consider that as well. And so that concludes the 5 criteria, and certainly happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
One question. I'm making an assumption that you're going to be using the gravel area while the construction of this pavilion is going on. So you'll have the 2 structures. What's the timeline for doing away then with the gravel area and the tents there?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I don't believe the tents would go up this year. If we get this approved, we would be going into a construction. So the tents probably wouldn't go up. And I think we'd probably stay more likely to stage in this location to the south. Would that be appropriate? Just because this would kind of cut off access to here. So I don't think we'd be using it really. So that could get improved at the same time.
Can I just see the first page of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
In that red, that house, is that a house right there?
That's a cabin.
That's a cabin, so that somebody lives there.
Yeah, people stay there.
Okay, and that's part of the property.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a number of them as you go down here.
Yep.
Any questions, Brian? Anything else, Phil? Adam? Ian?
No.
Okay. Last chance, unless the members of the public want to speak, we'll close the public hearing at this point.
I didn't hear anything you said. Can you start back to the beginning?
I would love to. Can I get a drink of water?
All right. Anything before we go to the questions? I did that. Yeah, I did do that. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we'll go to the questions here. You think, any comments?
I guess just one comment.
Sure.
That gravel structure, from my understanding, wouldn't require a variance. Gravel's just gravel. It's well with tents, but
Yeah.
as it stands, it's a patio, it's grass, it's gravel.
There's no
It's not like an existing thing is moving. It's
Yeah,
a new thing.
it is a new thing, yeah. Even though the use has been there.
The use is there, but
In a
this
temporary
is-
structure, but this changes everything by making it permanent.
Mhm.
I see. Anything else before we go to some questions here? All right. Paper. Could a variance be granted without being contrary to the public interest? pick on Ann.
Well, I'll make an assumption that the public interest is protecting the lake. And I would think that in the 6 months that the party tents are up, that they are putting out an awful lot of water. And so for that reason, I would think the variance wouldn't be contrary to the public interest as far as protecting the natural state of the water.
The lake. Yeah. Okay. Adam?
No, again, I don't see the inverse where the public interest is harmed in terms of use. This use is occurring and it's been occurring, and this is a more structured use of this. So I don't think anything's changed, so I don't think the interest in the public has changed.
Okay.
So yes.
Jill?
Also, yes.
Brian?
Also, yes.
Yeah. I don't see, right, should this be denied? I don't see the public interest necessarily gaining anything from that denial. So, all right, do we agree that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed if the variance were granted? Brian?
I think so, and I think you raised a good point that it's actually taking it further from the water, which we care about more than the class 5 dirt road, so, yes.
All right, Ann?
Yes,
Adam? Spirit of the ordinance.
I'll agree with Brian on this. Thank you, Brian. Yes.
Jill?
I'm the same, agree with Ryan, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that whole, the spirit of the ordinance, that's part of the ordinance, we're talking about your setbacks, and there is some competing setbacks here, whether is the lake the most important, in which case the spirit of ordinance seems to be observed here, or is it the road? And I think it's probably the lake trumps, so to speak, as something that speaks to the spirit. So I'll agree as well.
That's just a comment, just,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, and I think that, yeah, for any of us that have traveled that section of that road, I mean, they own both sides of it for a country mile, so it's, you know,
The spirit's observed. All right, would granting the variance do substantial justice? How about Adam?
I mean, I'll go back and say that again, if I tie this to the first question, and that, you know, I don't see injustice being created. I think the use is there, the use is occurring, will occur, and this is just a more structured version, so I don't see any substantial justice or injustice being done, so yes.
Joe?
I agree on yes.
Brian?
yeah, I agree, unless you're a parishioner or a camper that uses Pilgrim Pines, you're oblivious to it, so.
What's happening? Ann?
yes,
Okay, I agree. Could the variance be granted without diminishing surrounding property values? Joe?
Yep.
Brian? Could the variance?
Yeah, I mean, the letter you read was talking about it being nonprofit properties, and they thought about that in the 1920s when Pilgrim Pines took this property, so. Yes, I would say yes.
Okay, Ann?
yes,
Adam?
I mean, seeing that they are the surrounding property.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area? I'll pick on Adam.
I just think the nature of the size of this particular lot in general, you know, a concern I always have is overburdening the property with structures. And in this case, there is acreage that, you know, other properties don't have the same or enjoy the same, you know, the same basis for. So from that perspective, I think there's some uniqueness in both the size of the lot, which is different than usually it's the opposite we're looking at, right? So this, but in this case, it's the opposite. I also see that you know, you have a lakefront that, you know, you're balancing against one property line versus the other. So I do see some uniqueness to the property as a result of those things. So yes.
Yeah. Joe?
I think, yes, it's a narrow strip with competing setbacks that it gets wider as it goes around. So I would say it's unique in that regard.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, I agree with Adam and Joe. I think that to add into that, they're certainly the largest property owner on the entire lake,
Isn't that common?
with a large portion of their property being landlocked, waterlocked, if you will, between the road and the water. So I agree.
And
what Brian had alluded to earlier, that they own both sides of that road, so.
Yeah.
You have to, you know, if our public interest is protecting the water, then we're achieving that goal.
and that's sort of a special condition in of itself. As well. Okay. All right, owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other property.
How did you vote?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's right, I didn't even mark myself. Something like that. I concur. Owing to the special conditions of the property that we just discussed that distinguish it from other property in the area, do we agree that there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of our ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property? Brian?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Adam? I'd say yes, and for the points that we've already brought up.
Jill?
Yep.
Yes, and I concur. And finally, is the proposed use a reasonable one? Ann?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Jill?
Yep.
Brian?
Absolutely not. No way.
This is ridiculous.
Yes.
I concur that it is a reasonable use. All right, I think go to the, this point. In a motion on this variance application.
Okay, motion carries since.
I'll make a motion that we accept the variance as discussed.
Okay, we have a second? Thanks, Joe. It's been moved and seconded to approve the variance application as presented. Any question on the motion? We're voting on here.
Who had the second? Was it Jill?
Okay, seeing no questions, no others. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye. 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 No? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, well done.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment
Yes.
on the record, off the record? In a world that's gone crazy the past few years, the way you conduct yourselves, the way you listen to each individual party coming to your attention is really refreshing. So thanks for what you do. We just very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for noticing. All right, any other business or discussions to come before the board? Yes, oh, hi. Thank you. Just state your name if you don't mind, so Beverly can get you properly.
Oh, yes, they.
Mike Bonneville.
Cynthia Cordis.
Okay.
Cynthia who?
Cordis.
Cordis. Mike Bonneville.
We live at 217 and 235 Eaton Road. And further detail, tax map 49, lot 7.
Okay.
Eversource is a easement through our
Can
property.
you just tell me that again so I can put it in
The lot.
my record?
Oh, the tax map is 49 and the lot is number 7.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eversource has an easement through our property, specifically transmission line A152.
Okay.
They came before the zoning board of adjustment on December 20th of last year, 2021, for ZBA 21-026.
Okay.
There's a special exception application that GZA, Geo-Environmental, presented.
Yes.
We were not aware of the public hearing on the matter, even though Eversource was, their project team was on our property 4 days earlier on December 16th. And some of the information that they provided to ZBA was incorrect.
Okay.
Specifically, the owner of the property, they said it was up to date and it was, that was supposed to be as of December 20th, but we have lived there since June 5th, 2020.
Okay.
They also stated in their application that they were going to access their right of way to replace those poles
Yeah.
by a road on our property. However, that is also incorrect because they do not have our permission to use that road. And so, listening to the previous applications, one of the questions to grant the special exception, such approval will not reduce the value of any property within the district or otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I believe Brian said, well, there's no evidence to the contrary. And but since we were not there, we couldn't present that. We wanted to say that we're not opposed to the project itself, but some of their methods come into question where it would be injurious to our property. Tree farm, we have several hundred Christmas trees on the property, and we understand that within their right of way, they can, cut those down. However, their plans indicate going outside their right of way. And again, by using our road, which again, they do not have permission, and it would be injurious to the wetlands on the property. And to detail on that, they were on our property December 2020 to install these lightning arresters on those poles. And they damaged the wetlands in one area, and they also, two areas, one of which is the border with the Dickinson Memorial Forest. Because they claimed, well, we have these vehicles with large tires, it won't hurt the land. However, one became stuck in the wetlands, so the other vehicle had to pull them out. And the second vehicle ran over the fence and stone wall that borders our property and the Dickinson Memorial Forest. We did ask them to repair that. To date, they have not done so. And they, since January 2021, they've been pressuring us for a permanent access easement, which we have politely declined, due to it affecting the value of our property, which totals 28 acres. And, we have tried to work with them, on this matter about the access, but they've been 6 different occasions where their subcontractors have just appeared on our property without prior notification. And you can imagine in today's environment, if you find, a stranger on your property, you're going to, be questioning who they are. And we do have our entire property posted to, indicate that. They had their archaeology team park all their vehicles on the rail trail, which we asked them to, they could not remain there. And even though they were technically trespassing, we did open our gate and have them park inside our property to, avoid any damage there. So we just, we're here to bring all of this to your attention and let you know that even though Eversource has sent letters throughout this community and others about this pole replacement, what a great community partner they are. We would disagree with that because of their actions in our regard. So,
Have you spoken to the Board of Selectmen at all for this issue?
We have not. We did go to the Conservation Commission, and that was, again, because of the wetlands
impact was, and we did file a complaint with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, about that incident in December 2020. And so we, now with this project, they did submit some plans to the state for an alteration of terrain permit. But again, their, a couple of their maps that I'm happy to give you the copies, show their access, down our road. This is the old Stoll slaughterhouse used to be in this location, but coming down our road, and then their work pads and so forth would greatly impact our our trees. We would be losing so many, in addition to just again all of the wetlands impact. We have all kinds of great little critters like snakes and turtles and lots of birds and so forth. So
the reason I brought up the Board of Selectmen, and Mike might be able to weigh in on this, is in terms of an enforcement arm, they are the enforcement arm of any but our community. We're here primarily to grant relief from this zoning ordinance that or not, that the town has. And I don't know, Mike, I don't know if you.
So, yeah, so, no, these guys are really nice. I was actually at the Concom meeting and suggested that they reach out to wetlands, because though the Board of Selectmen is the enforcement arm, they're not the enforcement arm in this case. The people that permit it as wetlands, the people that enforce it as wetlands. So I'm glad you did that, because they really are the ones who can help you save. And at the meeting, I didn't really think about it, but I thought about this. I've had a lot of luck over the years with the Public Utilities Commission as well, because they're a utility. So Public Utilities Commission and wetlands, those are going to be your two best bets. None of us really have a ton of authority. We have no authority over them.
Mike, let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. If I recall correctly, you guys correct me too, when they are, like they said, our powers are limited, and we did what we were really allowed to do when they came in front of us. However, unless I'm mistaken, I believe there was a section of their build out, if you will, where they have to, once they have left an area, they have to return it back to the condition that it was in, whether it was wetland or grassland or tree, whatever it was, they need to leave it as good or better than the condition they found it. So if you run a tree farm, and I'm just extrapolating with common sense, which has no place in public utilities, or if I'm running a tree farm and they run over 30 of my trees, they need to fix that piece of land and replace my trees. I mean, that's a condition that they said it's part of their.
I recall them saying that, that when they were describing, because we asked about the birds nesting, the disruption to the wildlife while they were setting up the roads. And then while they were in there pulling out, and they had expressed that they were going to, need to, number one, put those timbers in place to protect the wetland.
Yeah.
And then they'd have to go remediate. And if
That's
that was going to occur.
That's right.
And that's, they were right here with their maps and stuff, and
So
they
when
were
removed their
clear.
pads and their
They were clear
construction,
that they were gonna have to, that I think the timing was such that they obviously gonna disturb some wildlife, some turtles and so forth. That
yeah, they're gonna disturb grass and trees with their big equipment, and it's just.
We never got mowed last year.
yeah,
They came on the property, on the wetlands, and they cut a bunch of stuff and they left it all in the wetlands. We had a forestry guy over there. So this type of behavior shouldn't be tolerated.
is it, so it's the subcontractors that
Yes,
they've hired,
John Brown was
and you've
their
taken pictures.
contractor.
Yeah, but they're still responsible.
They're still
But
ultimately.
they're not done in that area, right?
They're not done.
They're still working the area.
Because they're trying to get in there.
Yeah, so
we talked to them and they never said, hey, you know, can we come in? So, you know, a lot of nesting birds are gonna get, you know,
Probably.
absolutely. And when they put these timbers down, from what I thought they were gonna leave them and all the gravel and then put a base on top and then plant grass over.
Oh, no, they
No,
pull that all out, all the rocks they put down, they take all that
They're
out.
taking everything out.
Put the dirt back down where they created the trenches, replant, whatever, they have to do that.
'Cause they've-
All that media's coming out.
They've been wanting to kind of concrete that area because of, it's been a hair, unfortunately, with previous actions on the property, which we had nothing to do with.
Yeah, they can't leave that stuff, especially in the wetlands. I mean,
Well,
they had conservationists from here to Hawaii and back.
they're trying to bump out away from the wetlands onto, and they're just basically gonna push out. So when I asked them about the ribbons, they said, we know where they are. Well, what kind of cooperation is that?
Yeah.
You know, so what I have to do is go back to the archaeology surveys and locate each one and put a stake, because they're not supposed to go outside that area because of the archaeology.
Yeah, they know where they're supposed to be, and they don't own any of that land anywhere in this county. Mr. Jasmine's right.
Yeah.
The PUC in Concord
Nice, thank you.
and the Department of Environmental Services, we don't have any power.
Right, well, I wanted to just let you know. that
Sure.
they answered some of the
But especially if they're not
questions.
even done in the area.
They answered some questions dishonestly to the committees, which is, you know, really.
Well, I don't
sad
know,
thing.
I mean, so, and perhaps you're correct, because when they
Absolutely.
spoke to us,
Yeah,
they told us these things, and then they sent these other people
yeah.
onto your property, and they told you different
E-
things.
Even the surveyors went around the wetlands, hopped over the fence and barbed wire because of the snow. That's why I didn't plow down there, so I could kind of see what's going on, you know. I know it sounds kind of shady, but I mean, you would do the same thing, wouldn't you? To make sure no one's trespassing on your property. And they're
Well,
supposed to stay on their easement.
Yeah,
You know, it's a catch-22.
yeah.
And I just wanted you guys to know.
Sure.
The entity that, you know, we're.
Well,
dealing with.
they gave us a lot of, guff because we said, well, if you're gonna take down trees outside the easement, that, we would like to be compensated for that, but, the bottom line came back. No, we want to use your road, but there's no compensation.
When you cut
And-
trees and
And,
move rocks.
a reasonable person would say, that doesn't sound like such a good deal. So, come right in, but, it's,
Thank you.
just, kind of bad behavior, but we appreciate you.
I'm trying
Are you
to
collecting their
really
contact
follow up.
information? When you speak to them, are you getting their contact information? So you know who
Oh,
they
yes,
are?
I've been a very copious note taker.
Yeah.
On
I was gonna say, when she started off, I was like, oh, boy.
It was Brian.
What was it? Probably give you an idea. What, I mean, really for one of their permit, it was like 168 pages long, so Mike was great, he's like, I'll make you a whole pot of coffee.
And the forestry guy was very helpful also, so just let you know,
Yes, he
we're very
was.
grateful.
Well, just as neighbors, I'm sorry that it's occurring.
Yeah, no, I.
Dealing with it, but
No,
I
big
hope that you're
business,
able
We
to.
need the power, we're all addicted to it, so we're not trying
Well-
to stop them, which they probably thought we would be. But, there hasn't been any type of stuff like that at all, so.
I would like to think that the wood that they're replacing is, well, the material they're using is more environmentally friendly than what was in the water.
I'm willing to give some, give them.
But your
all
property should
Just
be,
to keep them on their easement, because whoever planted them didn't plant them and, I can't mow. And I can mowed all of that, so it wasn't like I haven't been down there.
Right.
I took a push mower and I've been mowing down there, so it's not like I haven't been down there. And if they put this stuff up, are they gonna have places where it can go over or, because
Yeah, all that's
that's
coming
everything
out.
is just.
All that's
It's all
coming out.
coming out.
Those pads that they call, those things cost a fortune.
Oh, yeah.
They don't leave those in place. And I'd be like you, I'd be asking a lot of questions.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
unfortunately, you're coming into us, which is great for the information, right? The
Absolutely.
chairman and the code. We don't have any power, so you sit there and you feel like a property owner, like, geez, I'm fighting city hall and the jack wagons are on my property and they're. But the PUC, and I think Mr. Jasmine's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, good luck.
We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
We're not going anywhere. So,
Good.
Yeah.
Stay.
No, it's a good place. We're very grateful. that we-
Oh, yes, we know, we
Thank
love the town and, well, I know Beverly from the rail trail committee. So,
All right.
It's there too.
All right.
We have quite a, lot of frontage on the rail trail, which, we enjoy. I even researched Mr. Eaton, Orlean Eaton, that the road's named after.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Civil War veteran and so forth. So,
Excellent.
Conservation Commission is lucky to have something.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
Yeah.
And we also had Farmer Johnson come get the hay to help, keep the fire potential down because, take up your grass, it's, potential. So I just
Yeah.
want to make sure, our lives, because no one's lives should be disrupted or,
Yeah, agreed.
we
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you very much.
I'm just aghast at the behavior.
Yeah.
No, so when they
we
issue
have
these
also-
powers to these companies, I mean, they are giving great power to these companies and a lot of people just get mowed right down. It's unfortunate. They almost got us for $1,500. So we're gonna let them on there. And they would have cut and done and bulldozed. Then they came back and said no compensation, so the compensation was ended. And so they've been coming by, Eaton Road, the check breaks. And they were out there drilling, putting in the poles, and, they tried everything. I mean, anything but actually knocking on the door and having a conversation,
Well, thanks again for being responsible
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
and give credit to our town.
Thank you very much.
Anything else to come before the board?
All right, best of luck.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Well, just thank you for listening to me earlier on that topic.
It's catch-22 of sorts.
It is, but I mean, thanks for listening to me rant about it.
All right. Did we have a motion to adjourn on the table? Yeah.
I'll give you one.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
I'll second.
adjourn.
All
I'll
right.
second.
All right.
Yeah.
Adam and Ann.
I saw Nan's gonna go up.
All those in favor?
Be loud.
Jasmine, how did you vote? On what? Closure of the meeting.